going on? What's going on? We are here playing Far Cry 6, and I recently posted a video with the HD texture pack, which is getting quite a bit of views, using my RTX 3080. What I want to do today is go over some of the best settings that I have set up to keep my frame rate above 60 while I'm playing with it uncapped and still keep visual quality intact. So without further ado, let's get into those settings and show you what they look like. So as we step into the menu system here and go into the video options, you can see that I'm playing on with 165 refresh rate in full screen at 1440p. And if we step over here to the quality settings, I do have them on custom. So your texture filtering, you're gonna leave that at ultra. That gives you the best visual quality when you're looking at textures, rocks, mountains, things of that nature. Shadows, I keep that at high. There really is no difference. That makes a huge impact visually, setting this from high to ultra. Your VRAM takes a hit, but visual quality to me is not worth the hit that it takes for VRAM and FPS. So I would set this to high. And your geometry and vegetation, I would set this to ultra. It doesn't take that big of a hit performance wise, so I leave that there at ultra. Your environment, again, leave it at ultra to get the best visual quality. Water, this has always been a big thing in all of Ubisoft's games, all the Assassin's Creeds. The water does look phenomenal, looks phenomenal at high. Anything below high, you start to see a graphical impact, but going from high to ultra, honestly, you don't see that big of a difference. So I would, generally speaking, keep this at high as opposed to ultra, just to keep the VRAM in check. Terrain, I would keep that at ultra. The amount of VRAM it takes to get to the ultra setting is really not that much, to be honest. As you see, it drops to 5.59 from 5.6 with it at ultra. Volumetric fog has been a huge debate in every single Ubisoft game. For some reason, they kind of stress the volumetric fog as a visual enhancement for all the games. I personally don't pay that much attention to the volumetric fog. You're too busy playing the game. You're not really looking for that kind of thing. So I would leave this on high. As putting it on ultra, you will see quite a graphical hit when it comes to your VRAM. And it'll probably also make the FPS drop. Now, the HD texture pack has been a huge contention on all the forums online. Ubisoft really needs to clarify this a little bit. In their literature and their documentation, it states that you have to have a minimum of 11 gigabyte worth of VRAM on your graphics card. That's not true. So they need to adjust that for people who are not really tech savvy and think that they have to, oh my god, I'm gonna have to upgrade my card if I want the best visual quality in this game. The RTX 3080, not the TI edition, but the 3080 is only using 10 gigabytes of VRAM, and I have this on. With the settings that I have set up here, you do not exceed 10 gigabytes worth of VRAM. It does add quite a bit of VRAM usage, turning this on as opposed to having it off, but you can run it on a card with 10 gigs, probably a card with even 8 gigabytes of VRAM. So just keep that in mind for all you guys using the 3070, 3070 Ti, even probably some 3060s and 3060 Ti's. So that should come as a relief a little bit, that you can actually set this on. It is quite a large file, so if you're downloading the game for the first time, add some extra time, go make some coffee and whatnot, because the HD texture pack is around 36 to 38 gigabytes extra on top of the game. The anti-aliasing you can see is grayed out, and that is because I have the fidelity super sampling on through AMD, and I'll explain that in 1 second. Motion blur, I keep that off only because I just don't like it in many games. Coming down to the extended features, I guess this is what Ubisoft is calling their RTX features, their ray tracing. DXR reflections, this setting is a must, as turning this off, you can see in the image down on the right hand corner, turning this off gets rid of most of all your defining reflections of the surroundings. Turning this back on, you have much better reflections and is very, very noticeable in the game. And I think it's, visually speaking, it is a game changer. Playing with this off and playing with this on, it's almost two totally different games. So I would keep this on. Your DXR shadows, I was playing with this for quite a while, and if you look in the image on the right corner of the screen, that little cart right there, with DXR shadows off, the shadows are a little bit more crisp, they're a little harder, as opposed to turning DXR shadows on. You can clearly see that not only does your VRAM jump up to 5.7, but the shadows themselves do become softer. I don't know. For me, I kind of like the hard shadows. It's a personal preference, I would assume, for everybody who plays the game. I would keep this off, to be honest, just to save some VRAM space, especially if you don't have that much headroom. And fidelity effects, this is the sharpening effect that AMD has. This does make a difference, a huge difference. It does not affect VRAM, if anything at all, but it does create quite a sharper image, which you can see when you're close up on trees and rocks and things of that nature. So I leave this on, and over to advanced settings. You can see I play with VSync on. Frame rate is off as far as enabling a hard lock, and the field of view scaling, I played with this a little bit. I had it at 75, I jumped it up to 80, then I bumped it up to 100. I don't know, I put it back to 75. Unless you're on an ultra wide monitor, I would say leave this at 75. The higher you put this number, the more graphical power you're going to use in your graphics card, which might affect your frame rate. So I would leave this at default, just if you're trying to get the best frame rate possible. And as you can see, the adaptive resolution and resolution scale is grayed out. Now the resolution scale, if you're on 1440p or 1080p, some people, including me, I played this a little bit. I jumped it up to 1.5, played the game. The VRAM shoots up quite a bit when you do that. The frame rate also drops. So I would say the trade-off between having that at a higher resolution scale, say at 1.5, as opposed to having super resolution on, super resolution is a better option. So I would keep the resolution scale at 1 and turn on the super resolution. The super resolution at AMD works with an NVIDIA card as well as an AMD card. So no matter which card you have, it's going to work. And it is quite a powerful tool that they put in, and it actually boosts frame rate quite a bit. So there's a couple different settings in here. You have ultra quality, obviously giving you the best video quality and picture quality. Then you can drop it down to quality mode, balanced, which balances performance and visual quality, or you can go down to performance itself, which is going to give you the best possible performance, but it's going to sacrifice visual quality to do that. So given the fact that I have an RTX 3080, I'm going to put this back on ultra quality. You may have to drop it down to balanced or quality depending on the card that you have, but just know that having this on makes a huge difference. So without further ado, let's go to a benchmark real quick, and I'll go back to the main menu in the game so you can run that benchmark. And just so you can see the difference between having that setting on and having it off, we'll go into options, run a quick benchmark real quick, and I'll stop yapping, and then I'll come back and turn that setting off so you can see the difference it makes. So really quick, what I want to draw attention to is if you look at the top left hand corner of the screen where I have my stats for how much power my GPU is using, so on and so forth. I'm really only going probably max to about 88% of my GPU power with the super sampling on. Another reason why you might want to put this on is because if you are recording using your GPU, having your GPU maxed out at 99% is not leaving much room for your GPU to encode video while you're recording. So you may experience frame dips, so on and so forth. I currently don't have to worry about that because I am using 2 PCs. So I'm playing on my gaming PC and I'm recording on my laptop without a capture card. I'm using NDI and OBS. So I might make a tutorial about how I have that set up later on in the future. If you guys want to see that, and there's plenty of videos out there, although they're pretty complicated on how they explain it. So if you rather see a simpler explanation, let me know down in the comments and I'll definitely put one together for you guys. So you can have a real simple way on how to not only set up audio, but set up video. We can look at the graph here. Obviously, you see the minimum frame is at 44, average frame rate is at 84, and maximum FPS was at 118. Real important is the frames rendered was 5,128. So it's rendering a lot of frames, and you're not taking that big of a hit, and you're still above 60 frames on average. That's always a good thing. So we're going to go back. We're going to turn off the super sampling option just so you can see where the frame rate dips. Again, you may not see that big of a dip on the RTX 3080 that I'm using, but your card may vary depending on what hardware you're using. I'm also running an AMD 5800X, which has a really small, if you even want to call it that, overclock at a steady hard overclock at 43 megahertz. So that's done inside the BIOS. Now, one thing you also want to pay attention to for everybody who does not have a graphics card that goes above 8 gigabytes. Looking at my top left-hand screen, you can see there are times where that VRAM goes above 8 gigabytes. So right now it's at 8,900, approaching 9 gigabytes. Now it's at 9. So if you do have only an 8 gigabyte card and you approach that 8 gigabyte limit, you will suffer drastic frame rate loss. So make sure you pay attention to that. For instance, I put it at the 4K resolution, which is about 2.0 on the resolution scale. When I did that, the game almost didn't open. I dropped it down to 1.8, and I was at 10 and some change gigabytes of VRAM, and the game was unplayable. So if you're looking at running the game at 4K, you are going to need a graphics card that has VRAM higher than 10 gigabytes. Just keep that in mind. But if you're playing at 1440p or 1080p, then you'll be just fine with an 8 gigabyte card or a 10 gigabyte graphics card. Take a look at the graph here on the screen ahead. You're at a minimum of 42, so it dropped by 2 frames. An average frame rate 81, so it dropped by about 7. Maximum frame rate is at 107, so it did dip a little bit there. And your maximum frames rendered dropped from 5,100 down to 49. So it didn't take that big of a hit, but again, I'm on an RTX 3080 with a pretty strong machine, so your frame rate may change depending on how you have your hardware configured. But as you can clearly see, having the super sampling on is the best way to go, and the image quality definitely didn't take a hit, if any, unless you're really paying attention and you zoom in on some things. So I'm going to turn that back on and just going to go into the game really quick so you can see what it's like when you're playing. Sometimes the benchmarks, to be honest, they show you one aspect of the graphical power, but they're not showing you the whole thing. So you'll run a benchmark on a game, and then you'll go and play the game, and you're like, wait a minute, in the benchmark I was hitting this frame rate, but when I'm playing the game, I'm at a higher frame rate or a lower frame rate. My average frame rate is higher. How come that happened and wasn't like that in the benchmark? There's a lot of different factors that play into that, so don't pay too much attention to those. If your goal is to get above 60 frames per second and keep the frame rate uncapped, then the super sampling is the way to go. And clearly, you look at my screen, I'm at 90 something frames per second. I'm not dipping, and when I do dip, you can't even notice. So I would say that's a win. And looking at the world, the water still looks immaculate without it being on ultra. Everything looks great. And again, I'm playing at 1440p. So yeah, I would say super sampling is a win. Guys like these settings, you want to see me do more games with more settings that I have set up, hit me up in the comments below. Again, don't forget to like and subscribe. It helps me out quite a deal. And yeah, I'm a small channel, so I only have 66 subscribers, trying to get up to 100. So appreciate all the help that I can get. And if you'd like to see a video in regards to those NDI settings, let me know in the comments below as well. I may make a video in regard to that, depending on how many people want to know about it. There's plenty of other videos out there by people way more qualified than me, but they also get way more technical than me. And I find that giving somebody a bunch of technical jargon is good in a sense, but sometimes people just go to YouTube because they want to get something done. They don't want to sit here and listen to a bunch of technical stuff. There's plenty of channels for that. You got Gamer Nexus, Linux Tips, a couple of those guys. And you know what? They're for your technical aspect of things. I think sometimes people just want to come into a game, see somebody set something up, know how to do it. And if they want technical questions answered, they'll go to those other channels. So yeah, if you want to see that content, let me know in the comments down below, and I appreciate you guys watching. And again, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button if you are subscribed.